Well, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. It's a beautiful Saturday here in the Burdekin. Annette, how you going?
Great, Brendan. I've had a lovely, very busy week. One more week until school holidays arrive, but so this week's been spent report writing, marking, and all the rest of it. But yeah, and I'm going really well. I'm
I,
really well.
I think all the people that I know that are teachers, I think that's their probably least favorite part of the job. Is it? Is it not?
Yeah, I think it's just the demands of everything having to be done so quickly in short time frames. And, you just work, you burn the midnight oil, you work around the clock, you get a lot of work done in a 2 week period and on top of, having to plan for new units and things like that and manage the daily activities of your work. But, I've been doing this. This is my 28th year of teaching, and yeah, I've been doing it for a while. I know that you do get out the other end. You just got to put in the hard yards in a very short
Mm.
period of time frame.
So along with your busy week, there's a fair bit happening again in world politics and local politics. It's they say they say a week's a long time in politics, but it's quite interesting out there at the minute. With the turmoil and obviously the pressure that China seems to be putting onto us in a an apparent cyber
Yeah.
attack,
Yeah.
which is very interesting. I know there's a lot of people not happy about it, and so I guess we'll talk about that in
Yeah,
depth.
we will. Absolutely. I was impressed that Scott Morrison came out on Friday and actually advised us all in a press conference of the whole nation that this business is going on. I mean, he stopped short of saying that it was China, but since then, everyone's pretty convinced it could only be China, North Korea, Russia, maybe. But, I think the antagonizing that's sort of been going on and toing and froing, and particularly how we've been treated in regards to barley and beef exports and, that sort of stuff. I think we should be very alert to what's going on in China. And, obviously so does our federal government. So, yeah, it's interesting, that's for sure.
It is interesting because, you'd think a nation of, 25 or 26 million people, obviously we're a big trading partner, we rely on them for a lot of trade, but it seems like it seems like a lot of pressure, hitting our farmers, and then attacking us in a cyber attack. They, a lot of people will be saying, "Oh, it's a form of war, and we should be very careful." And I tend to agree with them, but yeah, it's quite interesting politically what's going on, and obviously China and the American, America will probably flex their muscles pretty soon, and
yeah, well, China and India aren't getting along very well at the moment either. And, I think that we took a position where we demanded an inquiry into COVID-19. We know it came out of China. Obviously, that they don't like that. They don't like it. China doesn't like that at all. So this is sort of like, a bit of flexing of muscle. Now, was the cyber attack a dry run? Because obviously this attack suggested that it would be quite possible, if we weren't very careful with how we do things, that schools, hospitals and key industries could actually be shut down. And of course, in the event of a war, that would be certainly a target to sort of kick it off, really, wouldn't it? To really make a nation suffer and not be able to get things together to actually protect itself.
It's funny you say that. It's funny you say that, and I'll push you. I'll push the listeners out to a movie, a Die Hard movie. I think it was Die Hard #4, where they talk about a fire sale, and that there, like, it showed, chaos by hitting the banking system, hitting the your water, hitting your power, and all that sort of stuff. And so it does. I don't know if the people over in Beijing have been watching Die Hard 4 as a bit of a for a bit of
inspiration.
Inspiration, but if any, judging by what went on in that movie, if that was what actually goes on, if a nation gets hit with a cyber attack like that, it would be very damning to everyone. And I must say, a few years ago, when there was a telephone line got hit, I think it was in a flood, and one of the listeners might be able to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was Bundaberg or Rocky, where the phone line actually got hit, and we actually lost phone service.
I was in Rockhampton at the time on a farm, and had no phone communications at all, and for some time.
And it actually, being from a small town, like, all of a sudden it threw everything in disarray. People couldn't organise things, and again, I think probably last year or the year before, Some of the banks fell out, and again, people on Facebook, it was chaotic that we couldn't get money out. So, they were 2 times in my recent memory where something happened, and it did send communities into a bit of disarray. So, if China are looking to do something like that, take the internet down, that would probably be the quickest way. But it wouldn't be too quick. It wouldn't be too easy just to take the water, take power, take the internet, and you've got a
chaos, absolute chaos. Yeah, but you know what? I totally think, Brendan, that China should be very, very careful, because we've got some fabulous allies, and I know for a fact that there's sets of naval exercises in Malabar or in the Bay of Bengal at the moment. The Indo-Pacific strength is being flexed, the muscles, with India, US and Japan and Australia doing exercises, not only just naval but aircraft exercises as well. So we might be small, but don't underestimate the Aussie, and don't underestimate what we've got, because we've got a lot of things that are on it to our advantage. So I don't know what's going on. You can only be an observer in this, and you can rely on the information that you're provided, but it's not good. Whatever's going on is not good, and we need to pay attention.
No, definitely not. It's not good at all. And when a lot of people will be asking when can we get back to normal, and hopefully it's pretty soon. But pushing into some of the COVID stuff, we'll just do an update. So what's the latest? What are we doing? They're doing a ballot for people to go to footy now. Where are we at? 2,000, is it?
I think 2,000, which I think the Morrison government was suggesting 25% of stadium capacity. So that falls short. I think our 25% capacity of our stadium here in Townsville, something like 6,500. So I think Palaszczuk government is just taking it more cautiously. So I don't know what people think about that. And certainly I want to remind viewers that while we've got our live show on, you're more than welcome to post comments or questions or statements, and we will view those as we go along. But at least we are sort of making small steps toward, trying to get more things happening in our community. Like, school holidays is next week, and we can move across the state, but there's lots of, tourism sort of opportunities that are not happening or really reduced. So I don't know how that's going to go. And I certainly know that the figures haven't been good for the tourism industry, the economy for the tourism industry. So there's huge implications going forward.
I think SA, they've allowed Queenslanders to travel into South Australia now. So I think that's been announced. Some other things that I've seen were, I think Jetstar, they're offering very cheap flights to try and kickstart the tourist industry again. So, I would suggest, as soon as everything does open back up, just go on holiday locally. Go to Ely Beach, go to Mackay, go to Cairns, go to Townsville. Go, get out in the outback. Go, if you've ever thought, I'm going to go to a gorge up near Ingham, go and do it. Really support that local industry. Come to Ayr, go fishing. Just really focus on and trying to look after the outback. You can see, we got Charters Towers. Go there, prospect for some gold. Go to Gumloo and buy some cucumbers and anything. Just shop local. Really look after the North Queenslanders, and then as it gets further and further, obviously try and do the Australian holiday, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. I'm certainly going on a road trip, but so I'll be going all the way down to Rockhampton and maybe further. I'm not sure where I'll venture out after that, but I'll go inland as well. So try and do my bit, and we all should be trying to do our bit to help definitely. One another.
People will need that. It's definitely hurt a lot of people. Moving out of this, it'll take everyone. It'll take everyone to actually have a crack and make sure that we support each other.
All right. Well, Brendan, we also have a special guest today. We've got Deputy Mayor of Townsville City Council, Mark Molachino, an Ingham lad who has been in Townsville for quite some time. He's the representative, the elected, unopposed elected representative for the Division 4 in Townsville and newly appointed Deputy Mayor of the city. So we delayed our show a little bit today because he was out on the water doing his bit, fishing.
Actually, that'll be the first question I ask him. Did he catch any?
And so we got a little bit caught up. So we delayed today to accommodate that, which we can do because this is our show and we can do, we can be as flexible to cater for people and their lives. So let's just admit Mark. And today we're going to talk to Mark about a number of matters, but we're also going to try and, allow our listeners to hear a little bit more about the work he's been doing, what drives him, what motivates him, and where he wants to see our city go in terms of going forward, what it looks like, and the recent work that he's been doing in council. So let me just admit him now.
Mark, how are you, mate?
Okay, for some reason it won't. Mark, let's unmute Mark. Mark, you might have to have a look at unmuting yourself. Oh no, here we go. Oh, hang on. Sorry, there we go. Yes, that's it. We've got you, mate.
We did it.
We got there.
Thanks for having me on.
No, all good.
Yeah.
Mate. The first question we'll kick off with, mate. How'd you go fishing this morning? How'd you go?
One of my fellow councillors had purchased a boat and wasn't feeling really confident about taking it ahead himself. So that's Russ Cook. So I said to him, look, having a boating background, I'll come out with you and we'll go out. We just went up Ross Creek there and had a bit of a look. But I think the biggest, actually, I probably shouldn't mention the fish he caught. It might be quite embarrassing for him. But, look, we came away with at least 2 or 3 fish caught. They went back in, but it was just a bit of an outing, so it was good.
Yeah, good on you. No, it's good. We're just talking about, trying to support the local stuff and making sure that we get back out and even going out in the waterways and making sure there's your bait and tackle shops. That your fuel shops, local people that we got to support. So doing all that good stuff. Trying to keep it local and try not to shoot across to New Zealand anytime soon to spend your money over there. Let's try and focus. Let's keep it here.
Absolutely.
In Queensland, try and kick it back off.
Well, that's it.
But certainly if you're in New Zealand, you're quite welcome to come here.
Yeah, come across.
Anyway.
Yeah, we'll have you.
Yeah, we'll have you all right. Look, Mark, thank you so much for coming to our show. This is week 8 of our show, and we're growing in popularity. I think I mentioned to you on the phone, each of our interviews has a reach of up to 13,500. So we've done 8 interviews now, and you're our 8th. So it's really good to have you on board. And, our primary aim is to really try and give Central North Queensland people a voice, and also to allow the people that have watched this show to hear directly from their elected representatives and others on all matters to do with Central and North Queensland. And we also try to attempt to reveal, the man or woman behind the representative. So to bring you to life, make you look more real, which you are. Yeah. So we'll start with just a general question about, who you are and your background. I mentioned you're from Ingham originally, but, how did you get to where you are right now? How did you get to this point?
Look, it was a bit of a journey, a couple of different career paths, definitely. I've done quite a few things in my, what am I now? I class myself as middle age, I guess. But yeah, look, I grew up in Ingham. I was born in Ingham, grew up in Ingham, grew up in the beautiful cane fields, which I still love to this day. Basically went through school, went to college in Charters Towers. That's where I first met Robbie Catter. So I know him from way back. He was at the same college for a while. And yeah, basically got out of school and got a job in the sugar industry working at Victorian Mill up in Ingham. And it was a quite exciting time because CSR owned it then, and they were going through a major expansion phase. So it was really good because normally those sort of jobs are seasonal. And because they were expanding the mill so much, it was pretty much a full-time job for about 5 years. So it was in the off season, we were working constructing the mill and expanding it. And then in the season, obviously keep continuing to run it. So I did that for about 5 years and basically went, you know what, I think I want to try something a bit different. So the sad thing for me was when I left school, I left at year 11. So I didn't get to finish year 12 at the time. So I was about 23, I think it was. And I went and saw the local principal at the high school. Said to him, look, I want to join the Air Force as a pilot, but I need I need physics, English, maths, and another subject. And what do you think? And he said, happy to have you here. He said, you can just come for those 4 subjects and go as you see fit. The good thing was he said I didn't have to wear a uniform, so I was pretty happy about that. So yeah, I spent 90 and 99 doing year 12 in Ingham at Gilroy College. basically finished year 12, got accepted into the Air Force into the pilot category in 2000, I think it was, and then went away to do pilot training. Started in 2000 for pilot training. Unfortunately for me, I went down to Point Cook in Victoria, did my officer training there, did come back up to beautiful Townsville and did combat survival training up here, which was a good course to do, which I remember those skills to today, so it's always good. Then went down to Tamworth, my apologies, and spent 6 months down there training. The problem I found was once I got into the advanced stage of the pilot training, I found that I got airsick.
Oh my goodness!
You think I would have figured that out beforehand?
Yeah, that's a bit of bad luck, that one.
So it sort of hit itself well in the early phases, but once we got into the aerobatic phases where we were throwing the aircraft around a fair bit, it sort of discovered that. Then I discovered, okay, maybe this isn't for me, and I went into basically told the guys, look, you can't be up there feeling sick because you cannot concentrate, and it's quite a condensed course. They expect you to learn a lot in a short time. Yeah. And I basically said to them, look, I think it's a waste of my time, your time. How about I go and look at doing something else, which I did, and I joined as an operations officer and then stayed in the Defence Force for about 10 years and still in the reserves to this day. I do some here. I sort of don't have the time I used to now with my new role, but finding it harder and harder to do that at the moment. But look, you know, interspersed in that, I did a commercial helicopter license, so worked in the tourism industry. I did an instructor rating there, so I was teaching people how to fly for a while. Worked in tourism boats, worked in logistics. So you know, I had a bit of a hand in a lot of different stuff. So which I think has stood me well because I've got a bit of a general knowledge about how different things work. And also mining. Obviously, mining's a passion of mine. I'm a big supporter of mining. I think
absolutely.
So
done Australia well so far.
Just go back to the pilot stuff. So was it like the G-force sickness that you would get, or what was the?
Yeah, I think it was more so. You know, you're going from what they call a positive G environment where it's pushing you down in your seat.
Yep.
And then going to a negative G environment where suddenly you're weightless.
Yep.
And you're doing that constantly to and fro, and it just upsets the equilibrium in your ears, and basically then that throws you off. And look, what happened to me was, and I've thought about this a lot. Once I started to get sick on a few flights, then I started to think about it more than I probably should have.
Yeah, and then
and each flight, and that probably brought it on even worse. So, look, I enjoyed it. I think it's a great job for anyone that wants to get into that stream and can do that sort of stuff. I think it's a great job. The military is a great area for people to grow not only their careers but also their personalities and their leadership qualities. So.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's a bit disappointing you didn't get all the way through, but the commitment you showed to actually go back to grade 12.
So
I honestly don't know many people. I don't know many people who would actually do that, and it takes a lot of effort actually to do.
Took a bit of soul searching, Brendan.
Well, Brendan,
Brendan,
I actually went back to grade 12 and did grade 12. Yes,
can you still do that now? Like,
I didn't know that, Nettie.
Yeah, there you go. We got something in common.
I feel the odd one out.
You do. Sometimes experiencing some kind of failure is the most magnificent motivator, and it's a wonderful learning. And of course, you just reset your goals. Obviously, Mark, with a bit more maturity and experience in the real world, which I did too. You reset your goals, and you thought, "This is how I've got to go to get to from A to B. I've got to do this." So you're an example of that. But I'm curious to know, Mark, how you went from being in the Air Force to politics. How did that link happen?
Oh, look, I traced it back. I had a thought about this, and my wife and I were talking about this, how it all started. So I think, early on in the days, back in 2010, 2011, obviously knowing Robbie Catter back in the day, and knowing Bob as well in those days, I sort of got involved through them. Probably that started to perk my interest a little bit, I suppose, in the politics, in state politics it was. I was sort of looking around. Obviously,
Were there any sort of key issues that were sort of, you were sort of focused on that got you particularly motivated?
It was more about Jenny Hill lives next door to my sister.
Yeah.
Okay? So I knew her way before I got involved in politics. And, you'd have a few drinks and you'd talk about different things. And and just general chit chat at barbecues. We'd have at my sister's place, and we'd have we'd have discussions about what I thought about politics, which was, I was quite naive in the world as well. I just thought, why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? And, her being in the game for a while, she'd be able to guide you a little bit and explain to you why things couldn't happen. And I think further that, around the 2014, 2015 is when I was really, when Campbell Newman was in power, LNP were in power in North Queensland. They were making some wholesale changes around different things. And that's probably what perked my interest. I wasn't really happy with what was happening at the time. Mm-hmm. And I started to have those debates with her a bit more. And I think I wasn't too interested in the state sphere. So I was looking at around council issues as well, because there was impacts obviously from the state government onto council around different things. And I think eventually she sort of said to me, well, you know what? You're either going to put up or shut up, basically.
Yeah.
It's a time
here. Where your mouth is.
Yes, exactly. So I stayed in touch with her. And then when she was running her team in 2016, she asked me if I wanted to be part of it. So, and that's basically where it all started. I got elected into council in 2016 in Division 4 in the Upper Ross. Yeah. And it's basically, just gone from there.
Yeah, good stuff. And so you ended up joining the Australian Labor Party. Yes. What motivated you to go down that path, do you think?
I think, look, when I was working at the sugar mill, I was a member of the AWU back in the day. I probably didn't understand it too well back then, because we had our organisers at the mill who were obviously looking out for our best interests at the time. When we go into EBA negotiations and that sort of thing, the guys would go into bat. They'd come. We'd have that meeting. Right, guys, what do you want to see happen? What do you want? Do we look at 2%, 2.5%, and we'd all vote. And they'd go in and they'd basically fight for us. And it was great, absolutely great. And I think that's sort of where it triggered it a little bit. So I've got a few mates that are in the AWU at the moment as well, and we have a bit of banter on a Friday afternoon when we catch up and stuff like that. And I guess I wanted to get involved. I guess probably a bit more around making decisions around policy and stuff like that. So anyone can sit outside the tent and complain.
Yeah.
And I did a lot of that, trust me, whinging and complaining about why things are happening and what it was. And you know what? I basically made a decision. So do I, had to look at the policies of both parties. And I went, well, I don't really believe in the trickle-down economics that the Conservatives believe in. Feed big business and everyone else will get the drips and drops at the bottom. And I don't agree with everything Labor does either. But they were the closest party that aligns to my values that I grew up with. And so I said, rather than sitting back whinging, how about I get involved and actually have some input into the way things are done inside the party as well? Because what happens there is you actually have input into the policy that comes out. And then that goes to the party executive who make decisions at the conferences and stuff about what sort of policies the government enacts on the day. So, if you want to be part of change, you've actually got to put some hard yards in and actually be part of the plan. So
they often say, especially with the two big major parties, that they're what's the saying? It's a big church or whatever. Like there's a lot of what's the saying?
Broad church.
The broad church, right?
Broad church.
Do you think that I guess without beating around the bush, do you think the left side of the Labor Party has really lost their way? Like, without putting you on the spot and getting a little bit of daggers put out, but do you think or do you think it's more beat up from the media, or do you think it's been hijacked, or what's your theory on it? Because coming from you would say working class, AWU, all that sort of stuff, you would
fighting for the rights of workers, blah blah blah.
You would still believe that big business still needs to make a profit, but you just want to make sure the workers get paid for it also. And you'll find a lot of Conservatives have that same point of view, but it seems to be that left and right. I say unfortunately. Do you think that there's probably, call it conservative people who know that big business needs to still make money so that people can get employed, but you've got that. I don't know. You've got that two divide where you've got the free marketeers and you've got that left side of politics that are always in the media, and you've got those, I guess, more people in the centre, would you say? Like, would you be centre of the Labor Party, would you think?
Yeah, definitely I'm centre left.
Yep.
That's where I sit on the spectrum, absolutely.
Yep.
And I don't support far left policy.
Yep.
Yeah.
At all.
And how's that go? Like when you're in the Labor Party and you got people carrying on, and you're just looking at, does it really disappoint you with that they push that far left now? Or
look, you said it before, Brendan. You said it well. It's a broad church, right?
Yeah.
It's in both sides. You look at the conservative side, you've got your extreme right.
Yep.
In there that have their extreme right views, and then you've got the centre right, which are a bit more around the centre, you know, and massage. It's that centre bubble that everyone's trying to aim for, isn't it? I think that the majority of people, the silent majority they keep talking about nowadays, that people are trying to engage with in the middle. You know, I have seen some of the stuff that comes from the extreme left and the extreme right, and you just shake your head sometimes and you go, no one I know I would speak to in my day-to-day life, and I talk to a lot of different people across both sides, would ever entertain some of the policies that come out of either end of the spectrum. Yeah. This doesn't resonate with any level of common sense sometimes that we see coming out of there. But everybody's got different views. That's what I've learned. So, you know, everybody deserves to be heard, but nobody deserves to have it rammed down their throat either.
Yeah. 100%.
Have your ideas, but you don't need to stop people from getting to work by gluing yourselves to roads. You don't need to, you know what I mean? That sort of stuff is not good for anybody.
It is frustrating, isn't it? Because,
absolutely.
You know, it's funny, like the people I talk to, they just go, you know, the Labor Party are old, it's gone. And so it is pretty refreshing to actually, you know, speak to someone who's got their head screwed on and says, yeah, no, I'm part of the Labor Party, and you know, we're in the centre, and it's you don't often hear that. No,
and you're trying to change things. I think that's the other point to make too. So
I think that's the important thing. Like I said, Nanette, you know, anybody can sit back and have a whinge about it. You know.
Yeah.
And one of the things I guess I learned, you know, each side of politics has got that factional type thing in it.
Yeah.
And the factional thing is more about, and I'll put the Victorian Labor Party to the side a second.
We will talk about that. You must be deeply disappointed.
So I think when you talk about factions, it's more about different ideals and different ideas about how people want to see policy roll out. So, you know, people with the same idea about policy will form their own little group. It's just in politics, it's called factions. Inside a party. Ultimately, everybody should be supporting everyone. When you come out of conference for the Labor Party and we come up with a resolution and it's voted upon, the majority gets it, that's what everybody should go out and promote. And that's how any committee, any type of, you know, councils, that sort of thing, that's how it should work.
Yeah, and of course it hasn't been working that way. If we look at what's happened, you know, with the corruption in the ALP and Adam Somyurek, and not only that, looking at what's happening with the backroom boys and the LNP in the state opposition. So, you know, what's going on? You got any comments about that? Let's talk about Adam for a minute.
Well, I saw it was last Sunday night, I think, on 60 Minutes.
Yeah.
I saw the coming attraction sort of earlier in the night saying, hey, this is what's coming up. And I said to my wife, hey, might be a good one to watch. So we sat down and watched it and went, oh my God, I can't believe this stuff, you know, is going on, you know. And look,
and that it took a year's investigation, you know, and investigative journalists having to reveal it. Like, why can't a party reveal it themselves or notice that it's going on and do something about it? What keeps them shackled?
Well, absolutely. I don't know. I mean, from what I can see in the video of this guy, and look, put aside the fact whether the video was gained illegally or not, but what we saw in the video, excuse me, would I think get anyone's shackles up to say what the hell is going on, because you know these sort of people like this gentleman allegedly doing this stuff. If that's true, then they're affecting outcomes for the population in Victoria.
Yeah,
you know, installing the people who get pre-selected for these sort of positions should be that's why you have branches in parties.
Yeah.
So by the local branch, the people who know what the locals want can select someone to go in there. But unfortunately down there, this gentleman felt the need that he needed to control everything, so he had the power. And, you know, from what I understand is this guy wasn't very well known outside Victoria anyway. So I think he might have a slight inflated sense of worth outside that. But as Anthony Albanese said, you know, I might have met him once or twice and didn't really know his name. So it's disappointing because what happens, these sort of things happen in Victoria or anywhere, and it taints the whole lot.
Yeah.
It certainly does.
And that's the worst thing, you know, like you can imagine, you know, this will be the only time you hear me say this, but I feel sorry for Anthony Albanese. You know, some of the I read one of the text messages that were released, and I don't even know if I could actually say it on here, but I thought to myself, gee, like imagine rocking up to a press conference and that's what you've got to deal with, like talking about urine and corpses, like you're.
Well, I would have loved to have been on the fly on the wall when Daniel Andrews had that first conversation with him on Monday morning.
Yeah, imagine how that went down.
That meeting.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, but what I don't get, and this is just a question, it's not, you know, you don't have to answer it. How does a person like that get away with that for so long? I mean, that kind of behaviour is pretty obvious, isn't it? I mean, it's an attitude. So surely others would have noticed that something wasn't right here.
You would think so.
Yeah.
You know, you would think
I don't know.
that someone would have some idea. And look, the fact that I read in the Australian newspaper, the Weekend Australian this morning, that they talked about the filming may have been gained illegally by, apparently you're not allowed to put cameras inside a federal member's office to record things. But regardless of that, he must have known something was going on because he's placed the cameras in there. So he's obviously made the decision. Well, the paper's saying he made the decision to place the cameras in there. So has he gotten some intel from someone?
Yeah.
Hey, this is what's going on. Or did they just have enough of him? He's got growing too big for his boots and they've decided to take him out. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I think that pushes, you know, the one thing I keep saying, and I'm yet to meet someone that disagrees with me, but it's about, you know, when we vote for, you know, representatives, you know, doesn't matter what party. Like, I think the whole party politics is probably actually hurting Australia more than anything. I think it, you know, it needs to come back to who's actually skilled enough to hold that position and who's actually good, like who's a good person. A lot of the times, you know, if we're not actually getting good people into politics and who have, whether it's the area, the state, the nation's, you know, best interest at play, I think that's probably what's hurting us more. And obviously this guy, you know, he's
takes
gone
the
off
cake.
the rails and he's,
you know, and it's more disappointing that actually he's been voted in and yet he can carry on like that. And whether he's had some issues, you know, whether he's had some issues, you know, something tragic in his life's happened, so he's just flicked a switch and, you know, previously it was really good. But, you know, if it's gone on for a few years, well, then obviously it's...
You gotta wonder.
But, you know, I think...
Look, let's just throw in another news item for the week, which is the election spending caps. Now, is this going to help situations? Someone said that the election spending caps for Queensland, the new legislation passed this week, allowing candidates to have $50,000 in their budget and 87 for independents, etc., and a cap at 92 per seat for, you know, political parties. Will this help? Will this help, you know, so that when people aren't saturated in the media as much and that ideas can be debated and that, you know, people will be more interested in what the politicians have to say or the candidates have to say and more debate generated? Do you think this will help?
Oh, look, I think it goes a long way to trying to tear down those barriers for the bigger guys. I mean, doesn't always work, as we know. You can spend 80-something million and not get one seat. IKEA said it well, didn't they?
Well, the Labor Brisbane mayor spent $2 million on that campaign and didn't get up.
Says Adrian Schrinner, or are you talking about Pat Condren?
The Brisbane mayor. Mayoral candidate.
Yeah,
Brisbane.
so Pat Condren, So they spent.
I
read that in the paper this morning. With some record amount of money they tried to throw at.
In saying that, I'll just go back to the Clive Palmer thing. The one thing I say about that, like, fair enough, he didn't get anyone in the seat, but and hear me out when I say this. I think if you look at it, and this is going to be a lot of hearsay, but he essentially come in and did all the heavy lifting for the LNP. The LNP didn't bag out the ALP because people are they're overhearing the Ford Holden thing. Oh, you know, we got bigger engine than you. No, we do. So they're over that. But when a third party comes in, threw a heap of mud at the ALP, the LNP stood there and said, well, you know, we're not saying it, we're thinking it, but we didn't say it. And then all of a sudden, you know, they're going to open up the Carmichael, or what do you call it?
Adani Carmichael.
The Galilee Basin.
Galilee Basin, yeah.
Where Clive's got 2 mines. So he gets what he wants. He gets his 2 mines open because now they're going to rush that through. You know, to me, it stinks a bit. Like, I understand what you're saying. Like, you know, he didn't get anyone in there, but did he win the LNP?
He influenced. Perhaps.
You know,
yeah,
because people seen
preferential voting.
People seen, you know, he threw enough mud at Bill Shorten that it stuck, and obviously Bill didn't do himself any favors. But you know, I think that 80 million that he spent potentially won the LNP that election anyway. I think
from his side, it was a good investment.
Yeah,
you know, for him, it doesn't matter that he didn't win a seat.
Nah, that 80 million is the best money he's ever spent. He'd be.
Because we got to remember. Yeah, exactly. You got to remember what Mr. Palmer was a life member of the LNP.
Yeah.
Okay. The Courier Mail reported during the week that he had 4 of the party executive on the books.
Oh, yeah, on the staff, as staffers. Yeah.
On his staff.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're still intertwined in there in some form or another between the two. So, you know, I think it was a good outcome for him because that's what he aimed to do. He just ran a disruption campaign and he succeeded in it.
I have a comment here. Sorry, I'll just interject. I've got a comment here from one of our top fans, Tennyson Stark. He said the Victorian ALP has dealt with the situation quickly. If there's one type of corruption which needs to be looked at, it's how some Conservative politicians are supporting their own pocket over national interest, giving funding away to mining corporations which they have close relationships with. There's a reason the LNP threw down the new corruption legislation proposed. It's for their own pocket. Any thoughts or comments on that? And this is coming from a 16-year-old, by the way.
Yeah. Good comment. Awesome question. Look, I think we've all read enough stories in the media where we've seen that big companies, not just mining, but big conglomerates, international companies are getting massive tax breaks in Australia. So, you know, we got to remember that they're working the system and they're working the system well within the law.
Yeah.
So within the taxation law. So they're using the system basically to pay no tax. Okay. You know, you run an Australian business at a loss and sell your product to a business overseas in Singapore where you can make $1 squillion, then you pay no tax on your business in Australia.
Yeah, just profit
shifting. We all
shifting.
miss out on that. You know, that's Bruce Highway money that we could be fixing. Stop all the deaths on our highways. That's bridges. We finally got our Haughton River bridge done. How long did that take? I mean, that should have been done 30 years ago.
Yeah,
before we just got that through.
I think that was built in the 60s. Someone of a bit older stature might be able to tell us when it was built, but I mean, 60s.
Yeah, I mean, even if we could just get 10% of that tax that they should be paying by changing the taxation law so they can't find those loopholes, the country will be better off. Absolutely.
Yeah, we've talked about this a bit. I think taxation law needs to be changed. But the other thing I was going to say, just on the back of his comment, you know, you've only got to look at the Murray-Darling, the situation in the Murray-Darling, and you know, I'm not across it fully. Like, you know, that's probably one thing I haven't really got into. But anytime you actually start to talk about it, it seems like there's a lot of, dare I say, National Party people involved with buying water allocations and not being farmers, and they're making big money from it, and that would go into exactly what he's saying. There's a lot of I guess you'd call it corruption. Yeah,
and I've got to say her comment's correct there. The Daniel Andrews did deal with it very quickly.
Yeah,
I think we've seen 3 ministers now fall on the sword. They basically resigned. The disappointing thing is they resigned from their ministerial positions, but they still sit as members of parliament.
Yeah.
So, you know, they should be standing down from all duties, I think, until the investigation clears it up for everyone.
Valid point.
That tends to happen a lot. That, you know, a fair bit of mud gets thrown out and they just resign from the front bench. They go back to the back bench.
And hope it all passes over.
And they come back out, you know, when the election is, and
100%.
I guess.
Yep.
Yeah. And what about, Mark, you, as an observer, I know that, you know, you are in local government, but as an observer with what's happening in the state with Deb Frecklington, how do you think that's going down with the LNP and the sentiment in the city particularly? I mean, does it look like they're not united, you know, with the so-called backroom boys sort of, you know, kind of leaking information? Yeah, and damaging her reputation, you know, it looks like a deliberate act to divide, and it's not healthy for them, I don't think.
Well, I don't know about you, but in my short time being involved in politics, we've seen this play out a few different times on both sides as well, not just the LNP. But I think it's not a good look for the LNP. You know, if they want to win this election from their side, they need to come together and put a cohesive team together to show that, hey, we're ready to lead. But what we're seeing at the moment is not someone who's ready to lead. We're seeing a rabble of internal dysfunction behind the scenes that's now bubbled over into the public sphere, and people are scratching their head going, is this the opposition of who you expect us to vote for them? I mean, it's not a good look.
And the LNP president was an employee of Clive Palmer too. So I just, you know, went, what is going on here?
Yeah, well, that was first reported, I think, last year. I read it.
Yeah,
it was a while ago.
And I was in disbelief, going, what? How do you have the president of the Queensland LNP being the general manager or whatever it is on for a business who's a rival political party?
He'd be busy.
It's unfathomable. But, you know, when you look into it and you see the links behind the scenes and stuff, it sort of makes a bit of sense, obviously.
Yeah.
But, you know, the fact that they let it run this long, and it's come to a head now because allegedly someone's leaking polling against Deb Frecklington. And I read this morning that he's still there. He's not gone yet.
Well, he's resigned from his job with Palmer, I read. So
that's going to fix everything, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's just, you know, sever the tie like that.
Yeah, it'll come out that he got a good redundancy for the next.
Yeah, that's right. You never know. Maybe a hiatus in his contract, and he picks it back up after the election. Who knows?
Yeah. See, the one thing I just want to go onto that Deb Frecklington thing. I'll come out and say I don't think she can win it. My honest opinion.
Yeah.
She, and this is, you know, play the ball, not the man. Play, you know, I think she's doing a dreadful job. Like she genuinely, she's got a state government that's run up nearly $95 billion in debt, and she can't land a punch.
No, I would agree with you, Brendan. I don't think she can do it either. So, you know,
and the polling come out, you know, 25%. She, you know, that's her approval rating, and she come out and said, oh, you know, the faceless man, and you know, tried to divide the whole thing about the sexism and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But the polling is done with men and women. You're only getting 25% popularity. Yeah. That's men and women. That's not just, they didn't just go, oh, what do you think as a man? Yep. And this is the annoying thing. Like, if you want a leader, leaders are there to lead. They're not there to pull the sexism card or the race card or any other card. Yep. Stand up if you want to. You know, try and land a punch. And she can't land a punch. And I tell you now, a mate of mine, he told me after the last federal election. I said, oh, no, Labor are going on the state election. He said, mate, I honestly don't think they are. And I said, really? And he goes, yeah. He said, have a look at the opposition. He said, she's woeful. Anyway, I've watched it. Here we are in the 6th month of 2020. And I tend to agree with him. I don't think she's going to do it. And I think it's actually going to be quite embarrassing. I thought David Crisafulli, despite what people are saying, oh, you know, who's he? Ray Hadley said it the other day, oh, who's this man? Mate, David Crisafulli's a lot like he's well known compared to anyone else in that LNP. That's my opinion anyway.
Yeah, look, I tend to agree with you too. She's got to really, you know, pull out everything now to get that strength and unity and that ability, like you said, to punch a few things in the main domain, the public domain, because she's not doing. But I don't agree with you.
She doesn't.
Yeah, I don't agree with you that David Crisafulli is the man either. I really don't think he's the one to lead that party either. I have a different perspective of him. You know, I see him as a career politician out for his own ends, and I'll be honest with you on that. You know, if people remember, you know, he was a representative here at local government level in Townsville, and you know, there's not a lot of good feedback about his achievements. But you know, we all have our own opinion, and I love the fact that we do. But you know, Deb Frecklington really does need to bring out everything she's got, if she's going to have a chance, because I don't think she has.
Do you think if they lose this, if the LNP loses this in Queensland, do you think that that's the end of the Liberal and National Party, the merger? Do you think they? Do you
That's
think
a
they
good
unmerge?
question. Good question.
I think look, also, I've got some friends up in Ingham who died on National supporters. Yeah. And I have this debate with them all the time, and I sort of tell them, the Nationals were finished once they sold their souls to the LNP. Once they joined the LNP, and from what I understand, I did a bit of research on this. Correct me if I'm wrong. Before they merged, the LNP were in quite a bad place at the time.
Financially, they were.
Yeah, the party was nearly broke. There was some issues.
And I've talked to people about this in their. I don't even know what you call it. Like in the way that they merged it, they essentially had it so that they can't unmerge. Because what the National Party at the time, because they were more financial than the Liberals, which is quite funny, isn't it? The National Party wrote in there because they were worried that the Liberals would bring them in, take their money, and then kick them out. So they wrote it in there so they couldn't break it up. So
that's where, and that's exactly what happened, I think. And I'm pretty sure if they had their way, they'd certainly like to see the end of the Nationals and all about the Liberals. Sorry, I just had a fly then. I wasn't waving. I think, as I was saying, I have this conversation with my friends up in Ingham who have supported the Nationals for generations, and I think it ties back, Joh Bjelke-Petersen days and flows on from there. I just don't think the Nats at the moment are getting the cut through. They seem to be losing influence inside that coalition of parties. Liberals obviously taken over the show. This is my personal opinion.
No, I think you're spot on.
Deb Frecklington. Yeah, I think Deb Frecklington, and you'll know, you hear her talk at the news when she talks on the news and stuff. It seems to be this perfect recital.
Yeah. It's like a robotic.
Yeah, it's like slogans. No one likes that. Be a bit animated. Talk
be real.
Say some stuff. People say, "Oh, look, it's actually a person, not a robot, coming out and spitting out some stuff." And I think that's the problem with her is she's so refined and perfect when she comes out and says, they have those. Bill Shorten used to do it. You ever see Bill Shorten? He comes out with the slogans all the time. Yeah. It doesn't get cut through.
No.
Just come out and say what's on your mind. Obviously, temper it a little bit, but try and say what's on your mind, and people will resonate with that.
And that's the thing. Like I talked to a party insider, and he said they've had her like at a finishing school for for speaking, and they're there
like a journalist.
And they're trying to feed her charisma, and she's just leaving it on the plate and saying, "No, I don't need it. This is what I'm doing." And I think inside the party they're all just going, "Oh my God, like what can we do?" And I think they've left the run too late.
I think the hounds are definitely circling around the back.
Oh yeah, they definitely are.
They got the polling showing that she's dipping in the polls. She's not getting cut through. They're believing that if they don't make a change now, they're going to see another 4 years in opposition.
They will.
But who do you change to? And you were just saying this before.
Right. Who do you change to?
Brendan thinks Chris Foley's got a better name out there. Nanette, you don't rate him. He's another Ingham product who grew up in Ingham. I've known him for quite some time. But, I think if they want any chance at winning, they're going to have to do something. And they're going to have to do it soon. We're 3 months out. And whether Christopher Foley's the right one, or you look at Tim Mander, or you look at somebody else, I don't know, but I think some changes need to be made.
Well, I think it'll play out two ways. Deb will come out in a few weeks' time and say, "Oh, this is the real Deb Frecklington. I'm going to stand up, and this is the new me." And they did that with. I think they did that with.
You're an optimist. No,
they did that with Julia Gillard.
That's right.
This is the real Julia, and I think that's what they'll try that ploy, and everyone will see through that, and they'll still kick you to the curb. I don't think she's got no hope whatsoever. That's my honest opinion. I think the LNP has got no hope.
I said a week and a half ago they would have to change the leadership within the next 2 weeks if they're going to have any impact. As far as I'm concerned, I think they'll end up staying with what they've got, but I don't think they'll win. No, I'll give it another week, but if they don't change, if they don't change soon, like a very soon.
Well, saying that, Nanette,
run with it.
When Campbell Newman got elected, how long was it before the election they rolled him out to become the leader outside Parliament?
Don't know. Do you know?
He was the first leader outside of Parliament, wasn't he?
Yeah, remember? He was.
Okay.
He stepped down from his council role, I believe, as a mayor, and went into the leader of the opposition outside of Parliament.
Okay, well, that's
So he wasn't actually in Parliament, but he was leading the political wing. But I don't believe it was that long before the election that they rolled him out and said, "Hey, this is who we're going to roll with now to get us through the election." So,
if anyone's watching, just look it up, see if they can tell us and
that's
put a
right.
post on it. I'm not sure.
We just got a question. What are your opinions on the LNP move to double Humidity university courses and reduce others?
So double. Sorry, what was that, Brendan? I missed that, mate.
Well,
they're actually increasing the fees for students who university degrees in humanities and commerce areas, and reducing in the other qualifications that sort of lead straight into the workforce, like teaching and nursing and various other areas. But there is this move. So now I believe humanities and commerce fees have been raised by about 112%. Wow. And on par with, a medical degree costs. So it's really to decrease the numbers in those areas.
But this is the universities doing it, right?
Yeah, universities,
I did read something. I'm not au fait with it, but I did have a glance over a story about it.
Yeah.
So essentially, like if we put that in layman's terms, just say an economy degree was say 20 grand. Now it's going to be 40.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's essentially what's happening. So Nanette, well,
it's actually an interesting question, because I was thinking and talking to people yesterday about this, because it came out only this week. I just think it's changing the face of our universities to another degree. It's taking it more into, training or degree qualifications for the workplace, rather than traditionally what universities were, which were places of debate, philosophy. I mean, yes, there was that element of, we're training to be teachers, or we're doing this and doing that. But, there was much more energy around, the thinking and ideas, and, I don't know, it's reducing that. I mean, yes, it is in response to what is projected for employment in the future, but universities are not just about places of employment. There are places where ideas are born, and or studied or researched or, brought to the fore. So it is quite interesting they've attacked humanities, which, includes areas like history and commerce. To me, that, it just seems crazy.
So they're doing it, is it based on sound, I guess, science around needs of Australia?
It's projected employment areas.
Yeah, because, I think we have to do what we need to do to stop importing labour into Australia.
Yeah.
We've got enough people in Australia to be able to service everything that we do. So as long as they're making these decisions based on the needs of what we need out in the workforce to make Australia successful, then, I don't have a big issue with it. The only issue I guess I have is what's the reasoning around increasing it? Are they trying to deter people from doing courses? Is that why they're increasing the price?
That's what it'll be.
Yeah, that's perception. And I believe the university unions have said, look, they're actually come out against it, because what you're also putting at risk here is the university teachers and lecturers who are in those fields. You're crushing their domain as well, but you're also looking at some discipline areas that are so important for world knowledge and, understanding our history, as we're probably finding now in the community. A lot of people who don't understand, what Cook achieved or Churchill, or, you see these sort of polarizing opinions about some of the historical figures, like them or love them in terms of what they did in their period of history, but because there's not that knowledge out there. And I think that's probably cause for concern, making those degrees more expensive. That's a bit interesting.
No, 100%. And look, I don't think anyone that has a passion for those fields should be deterred from doing it because the university decides that we're going to make it more expensive so we don't get as many people through the door.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not how society should run. It should be a needs-based. Obviously, we talked about before, needs-based for the community. What does the community need to make Australia successful? Well, we need more on this side. That's fine. But you don't penalise the other side as well, and the humanities and commerce side, just that you don't attract more people. So, it's
about balance, isn't it?
Exactly.
Look, we're talking about politicians. I'd love to ask you this question, because obviously in your role as councillor and deputy mayor, you mix with all levels of government, all different types of politicians. Tell us about some of the good ones, the ones you sort of have a bit to do with and you like the way they do things. That'd be really, I'd love to hear your opinions.
Look,
who's good out there? Who's genuine?
Well, I've only been in the deputy mayor's role about 3 months, I think it is.
Yeah.
I think it's since April or so. But the last 4 years as a councillor, I guess, you get to meet them as they come through. And look, it's mainly the state politicians that we tend to deal regularly with. And like any sort of organisation, it's full of different characters. There's some really funny characters, some really serious characters. You've got Bob, who's quite animated with the stuff that he does. Which, it was the Grim Reaper, wasn't he, this week? Someone said they'd love to see inside his wardrobe to see what he's actually got in there and pulls it out. Bob, who's very passionate about the North, but he's got different ways of delivering his message, obviously. But you know what? For all the people that detract from what he does, it was all over the news the other night talking about Holden.
Yeah. That's right. That's right.
Whatever they want, but he
manufacturing. Yeah.
He knows how to get a message out there.
And that's the thing, being from a minor party, that's the only way that
that's all they've got. Yeah.
That's all they got.
The power of the media.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And, I met the previous Prime Minister. Which one was that?
Malcolm.
Turnbull.
Malcolm was in Townsville at one stage to have a meeting with the mayor, so I got to meet and have a quick chat to him. So that was good. He's a nice gentleman, regardless of what people say in the media. He was quite friendly, and he's quite sharp as well. Very sharp mind. But yeah, look, as far as far and wide, I mean, I try and work across all spectrums of politics. Obviously, I'm a member of the Labor Party. Yeah, absolutely. But at the end of the day, we're all here for one thing, hopefully, and that's obviously to deliver a better community for everyone. So. I think people forget about that. That's why I keep saying the party politics, I think, is actually hurting the country more than people realise. Yeah. Because, I always challenge people. I think, despite what people think, I think, if you're in this party and I'm in that party, as long as you're actually half reasonable, we could probably agree on 98%, even 98% of things. Yeah. And I think that's what we should focus on. And people generally don't. They'll go, I hate that party because they want to soften gun laws. And you go, well, but we still want to do the roads and we still want to do this.
There's still a lot more to
there's more to politics than just one focus. And that's
I think
the disappointing thing.
That's 100%. How many people do you know in the public that aren't in politics that you get along with 100%?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right. It's you're dealing with people in everyday life. Not everyone's going to agree on everything, but you've got to agree to disagree.
Yeah.
I see a lot of, especially, even locally here, there's a lot of tit for tat at the moment bouncing around in the papers and stuff like that between a few politicians. And it really, I understand the concept behind it, but it's probably not the best way to get what you need from that person. Myself, I'd prefer to do it via calling a meeting with that person. Go and sit down with them across the table. Emails are so impersonal and messages and stuff like that. You've got to sit across the table so you can banter. You've got to banter with people and have that discussion and go, well, you know what? I don't think that. I think this, and here's why I think that.
Yeah.
And that other person can then give you their reasoning behind it. And, you won't agree on everything.
No.
But you come out of it and hopefully you've got the best interest of the community at heart. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, 100%.
That's the bottom line. Look,
Yeah.
let's talk a bit about our community, Townsville. We've talked about a whole lot of other things, but, you've just gone through a budgeting process, and I'm led to believe that the budget will be handed down in the next fortnight.
Yes.
How did that go? How are things looking for us? I mean, you probably can't give me specifics, but...
Okay, sorry, I can't give you specifics yet because it hasn't been handed down. But look, it is a really stressful time for everybody.
Yeah.
We've got,
especially with the COVID stuff. Is that what you sort of
Yeah.
well, it makes it a lot harder as well, because there's certain factors that we're going to have to look at in the budget in relation to the COVID stuff as well that we need to take into account, obviously. But any year in itself, if you put the COVID stuff aside, it is a stressful time because the majority of our revenue comes from rates, and we're very conscious of that impost to the community through rates, But also, I think the other side of it is that council is expected to do a lot more than what it historically has done.
people's wants have gone up. People's wants have gone up. They actually want
programs, a classic one is programs are started by state governments around the place, and they're great programs. And what they do is, because they don't run programs so much, they'll hand it off to the councils and say, hey, listen, guys, we've got this idea. Here's some funding for 3 years to run this program. Public absolutely love it. We run it for 3 years. Then the funding runs out. Oh, we're not funding it anymore. The public go, well, hang on, council, you've been running this for 3 years. Why don't you continue? Well, then we need to then go and find that money out of ratepayers' funds to continue that great project, or to continue that great type of thing that's been running for the last 3 years. So, these sort of things start adding on top of all the stuff. You talk about roads, reticulation and rubbish. There are four things. There are 4 things that we do, but we're also pulled in different directions. People, we supply a lot of community support through facilities and stuff like that, where we allow people to have meetings and stuff like that at no cost.
And one of the focus areas, obviously, because it's been a fairly significant issue in our community, is crime. And I know that, during the time that I've spent in the community, there was a lot of expectation placed on council to address crime as well, when we very well know that policing, etc., is a state funded and state managed, operated function. So I know that Townsville City Council has spent a lot of our ratepayers' money on bits and pieces to assist with the strategic approach to addressing crime. How do you respond when people talk to you about crime and kind of say, well, look, Mark, what are you doing about crime? What are you doing, Mark?
Yeah, it's a hot topic at the moment, as we know. There's something in every bulletin paper. We read it every day. Someone's getting their car stolen, someone's getting broken into, or kids are getting belted by other kids, and there's all sorts of social issues happening at the moment. And from a council perspective, as you rightly said, Nanette, we're not funded to run police. We're not funded to run jails. We're not funded to run pretty much anything to do with crime and justice. What we do try and do is help in any way that we can within our remit and within our budgets, obviously. But, we're up to, I think, about 300, quote me on this, about 320 to 330 CCTV cameras around Townsville now.
Yeah.
So when you think about that, we originally started CCTV cameras to keep an eye on our assets. So we'd set them up at sewage plants, and we'd set them up at, generator sites and different things like that to make the security. And, just through requests from police and stuff over the years, we've built this whole network across the city of CCTVs. What you got to remember is these things, they go out of date pretty quick. So new technology comes along, so they need to be updated quite constantly. The software that goes with them to monitor them, we've got to have operators that do it. I think we're up to around maybe $4 million a year, don't quote me on that, just looking after CCTV every year. So that's ratepayer funds, right? That goes towards, I guess, people's feeling safe in the community. We don't get any of that money back from the state to fund to look after.
But the state often taps into that footage to solve crime. So it's
absolutely, and we're happy to give that to the police. The police come and see us all the time about it. But even that was one of the things I raised during the budget process, was we need to be very careful and put some downward pressure on the expansion of our CCTV network. because the impost to the ratepayer is just increasing exponentially. And where do you draw the line where we start talking to state governments about, hey guys, police probably the biggest user of the technology that we've got when they come in, and we're happy to supply that. But maybe we need to start having a discussion about how we fund these sort of programs.
Absolutely.
I think we've got about half a dozen mobile CCTV cameras as well that we take around to different hotspots on request of police and stuff. And I don't know if you've ever seen those set up. They're just a little white trailer with a camera.
No, very well.
They beam back to our central area. But further to that as well, we also have a community response team.
Yeah.
So we've got 2 vehicles and 2 teams that look after Riverway, Dean Park in town, and they run around. They cost probably around $3 million a year as well.
Yeah, quite expensive.
So, these things add up, and these are costs that probably people don't understand that we then have to bear. And the only way we can get that money to pay for those services to the community is through our rates.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just on that, we've just had someone come in talking about rubbish. What about the dumping fees? And I just wrote this down before when you mentioned the rubbish. And the reason, when you look at councils, what are they? Roads, rubbish, and what's
rates?
So
roads, rubbish.
Yeah, the 3 R's.
Community services.
So the one thing that probably annoys me the most when you look at it, without being long-winded, so the rubbish, if you look at the recycling stuff, a report came out the other day that I think in Australia only 10% of our recycled stuff gets recycled. Rightio. So you get big landfills. You can see that on the way into Townsville. You've got this monstrous mountain that just continually gets bigger and bigger, and all that comes at a cost. The thing that always I question, and there's another rubbish dump in Proserpine, same deal. It used to be a flat dump where they dug into. Now the thing you wouldn't be able to drive a car up. What I'm trying to allude to, how come we don't do what other countries do and actually burn our rubbish for power generation? I've got a mate who works or either works or worked in that sector, and he said, for $50 million, we could actually kickstart something like that. Now, that would essentially, that $50 million outlay would eventually start to actually bring money into the council. Why does the council look at that sort of stuff? Is it something that's on the agenda, or is it just, it's too hard, we leave that to private enterprise? All of a sudden, if you're getting other councils to bring rubbish to you and you're burning it to make power and you're making money from it, is Townsville big enough to have something like that? Or, what's your thoughts around that?
Well, look, that is happening at the moment. There are discussions happening around that waste energy.
Excellent.
We had one of our staff travelled overseas to actually look at it firsthand. Not last year, the year before. And has come back and provided us with information about how successful it is. One of the things about waste energy, and I asked this back in 2016, 2017 budget when I was first elected, because a mate of mine was living in Denmark at the time.
Denmark,
and they've been so successful at it that they're now importing rubbish. But they provide electricity and heating as well as part of that service. So what we're trying to look at, it might cost $50 million to set it up, but to reach a scale of economy that you'll get a return on your investment through the electricity side of it, because obviously we don't need the heating up here, but it'll be all about the electricity side. You then need to make sure you have other regional councils supplying you with product, basically. So those conversations are happening at the moment about how we can get this thing kicking off.
Is it realistic? Is it realistic? Like, is everyone pretty, pretty excited about it? Do you think it'll kick off?
All the other guys I've spoken to are very positive about it. We can't just keep burying rubbish in the ground.
To me,
it's unsustainable. We just can't keep doing that. And I know that Denmark were doing the same thing through landfill. And they've actually gone back in, uncapped all their landfill and started digging it up and turning it into energy. So look, it works. But there is a capital investment. You need to make sure you get the modelling right to say, hey, if we do this, how much rubbish do we need to burn to make it self-sustainable, basically. So those conversations are ongoing. So 100%, Brennan. It's a great idea, and I think it's something that we've got to continue to work on and make it happen.
Yeah,
Not just
because
an idea.
Yeah, which would lead to other things like, you know, in the Burdekin, we still obviously burn our cane.
Yep.
You know, there's cane fires there last night, and you know, I think there'll come a time where I think the bagasse that they get off it will, you know, will be used for power generation, and especially with copper string, you know, like pushing out there. You know, and as we grow as a nation, you know, we're going to, you know, need more power if we're not going to do other things.
Well, I guess
absolutely.
The you talk about the bagasse side of it. So I know I can only speak for Victoria, Melbourne, England. I remember we used to we produced enough steam through our boilers, not only to run the milling train to crush our sugarcane, but also to run a big turbine there and produce electricity to put back into the grid during the season.
Yep.
So I'm not sure what other mills do that, but I know they were generating electricity through that. But the problem with the Burdekin is that because you burn it, you don't get so much gas.
They do. They still, even though we burn it, they still do get a fair bit. Now, if you actually, there's a website I've seen where they, and again, this is just, you know, you hear something and you don't really check it, but they say in the first 2 years or something that it actually paid $40 million to actually put that power generation back into the thing. So
nice.
I don't know how true that is, or whether it was just a made up thing, but yeah, it's one of those things that, you know, obviously power, you know, there's a lot of ways we can do it, and I think rubbish is a definite untapped resource, and there's nothing better than if you can actually have people drive to your dump and give you free energy.
That's right.
You know, to me, it's a great thing.
It's a winner. It's absolutely a winner. Yeah. Absolutely. Look, one of the other things I wanted to talk to you about, Mark, you know, and obviously, you know, these big projects and, you know, opportunities are pretty exciting, because I, you know, recently had a look at some of our unemployment statistics in the region. Again, obviously, even if we don't take into fully account of COVID implications, you know, youth unemployment in Townsville is still a problem, and it's obviously gotten a little bit worse, you know, around the 17% mark. You know, what do you think is, you know, really going on with the youth, you know, and why our unemployment rates are so high for young people?
Look, and that's one of the drivers why I got into council, I think. Also, I've got 3 young girls myself, 3 kids. And obviously I want them to stay in the area and have their families here, and so I can continue to spend time with them. So it's a hard one. Hey, how do we engage the youth to make sure that they're part of our workforce? You know, if you do, I think the mines have done it very well. We see a lot of apprenticeships and stuff rolling out through to the different mines and stuff, but a lot of those also tend to be residential based, so the guys will leave town to go and service those mines as well. We do have the metalliferous mines around here where we do FIFO, which is good, which means they're based in Townsville, so that'd be great. But, you know, when we saw the mining downturn in 2000, when was that? 2012, we saw how reliant we were in North Queensland on mining. We had all our eggs in the basket of mining, and as soon as it fell over, everyone went, "Oh God, what do we do now?" So I think that was our opportunity back then to try and spread our wings and go, right, what other industries are we looking at? You know, we had CQU move to Townsville to try and tap into that education side of the house. But ultimately, the people going through those university courses, where do they go when they come out? You know,
no, that's right.
It's a hard one to try and do. And we do it from a macro level,
One of the other alarming statistics that I have is that we are the second highest city in the state when it comes to median or averages on job search time. So on average, the median rate it's 8 months. It's people looking for jobs for 8 months. We're the second highest in the state, you know, and I just think, wow. I mean, I know that I have a position is that if we can get our regions going, and I think Copper Stream 2.0 will help, you know, I think the lithium ion battery plant and all the other bigger projects that are in the pipeline, you know, I think they will help. But why is it, you know, that we're, you know, a city with so much and a region with so much to offer, we just can't seem to get this happening? What, you know, what's blocking it?
Well, I think in that data that we looked at, it said that I think healthcare and social employment was the biggest driver of employment in Townsville, and I think it's been like that for quite some time now. that the social and health sector has been keeping us afloat. But it's a big problem. How do we generate those jobs for our youth to get involved and not have to leave town?
Yeah.
So we can build Townsville. And I think it's about, I think state and federal governments have to play a big part in this. We've been talking for a long time about getting the federal government to move some of their Canberra-based institutions up into the regions.
Yeah. Okay.
We had the ATO move in the area, and they moved up and brought some. That was great. It was an awesome
decentralised government.
I think that plays a big part of it. You know, why does it all have to be central down in the big cities? Why can't we have those people up here to help build the regions?
Yeah. No. Absolutely.
Yeah, because to push into that sort of thing, decentralising, but also we don't have those big make money projects, like the Hell's Gates and the Urina dams that are going to really inspire more infrastructure up this way
and investment,
and investment, manufacturing, the fact that our dollar's been kept up so high for so long has probably hurt us. The cost of power is too dear. All that can be fixed. All that can be fixed. It's all legislative stuff. And if we fix all that sort of stuff, all of a sudden you've got manufacturing, and those 17% get pushed into manufacturing jobs.
That's right.
Which need which need to be not expensive. They can't be your $50 an hour jobs. They need to be your cheaper jobs, and that needs to be. I guess that comes into that other thing where if you're on welfare, you can't be making more money on welfare
than what you can in a job. Yeah. Yeah. Look, that's. I'm going to throw in this other question now, Mark, because you're in the spotlight for us today. If you were premier for 7 days, if you were all of a sudden we gave you a magic wand and you're premier, and you can make change for Townsville or Central North Queensland, what would you do? What would you do?
Oh, okay. I was premier for 7 days. I think I'd like to see manufacturing come back to Queensland.
Yeah.
I'd be setting the rules so that we are the premier state to come and invest in for manufacturing. Now, whatever that needs to be, from a state perspective, and obviously I haven't worked in the state government before, so I don't know what levers they can pull, but they certainly have a lot more levers to pull than, say, we do in council, for example. So whatever, getting industry involved, right, what do you want to do? So you can see we've been involved with the lithium battery plant type thing out at Calcium there. So we've done what we can to attract industry. And look, that battery plant, that was being chased by a lot of different regions in Queensland, trust me. We were lucky to secure that here. We could have lost that quite easily. So, we were trying to make sure there wasn't any roadblocks in place. So I guess from a state perspective is, do we want to manufacture things? Do we want to make things that we can then export to the world and to the other parts of Australia? Because at the moment, we're bringing everything in. And I heard you guys talking before about China. So reliant on China that, you're talking about this cyber attack that we've just had. When they don't have to, from my personal view, come and attack us physically. We're so entrenched into buying things from China now. All they have to do is turn the taps off.
Yeah.
We find ourselves scrambling now to try and find product that we need to keep our country going. It's completely ridiculous that we found ourselves in this position, Yeah. So the first thing we need to do, federal and state, is find out what we need to
sort that out.
Bring it back, like, for God's sake.
Yeah.
And it's not even that hard, like I said years ago when there's a local guy here said, in 10 years' time, we're going to lose car manufacturing. And I said, you reckon? He goes, yep. He said, it's all over. Anyway, and even then from a young age, I said, makes sense. From a government perspective, if just make it law that all taxis and all government vehicles need to be made in Australia, and it's funny, Bob Catter come out this week and said, if we made move a motion that every car that the government buys, for horses for courses or whatever, but he said there'd be 40,000 cars a year, 40,000 cars a year. And surely it didn't take until 2020 for someone to go, that's a good idea. Surely, I said that back in 2010, back in 2008 or something. It just seems that we're so silly. As a nation, we're so silly. And I heard the other day that, and again, this is a state government thing. You know, we couldn't get hand sanitizer. We had to buy it from China. Meanwhile, you had down in Dalby there. They're trying to make, they're an ethanol plant, and the state government wouldn't buy it off them. And it's just, we are so dumb. Like, on the number plates, we're the smart state. We should get every one of those. We should get every one of those number plates back. And
you can even argue that with our coal mining, and iron ore. Why aren't we making our own steel here and exporting? Like slabs, like the Project Iron Boomerang. Why aren't we doing big stuff like that? I mean, I'm sure we would have no trouble in finding investors with such an economy or an industry that is sought after across the globe.
Can I give you an example?
We need to get smarter.
I'll give you an example. About 5-10 years ago, a friend of mine had a steel fabrication business in Ingham. Now, they had a big shed where they fabricated parts and stuff for harvesters, farming type parts, that sort of thing, for agriculture. So they'd manufactured it, invested in laser cutters and stuff to reduce their costs so they could compete. They basically started feeling a bit of heat because people were bringing stuff in from China. So they split their shed in half. They had the agricultural front-end supplier, the guy that was buying it and selling it to the farmers. So they were manufacturing it, basically taking it on a forklift from the manufacturing side into the warehouse side on the other side where the farmer would come in and buy it. And it was still cheaper for that guy to buy it imported to China, landed on his floor.
Yeah, see, that's where we fail.
So when I look at it and go, so that business failed, right? Because you cannot compete. They tried everything they could to fix it, but you just can't. So how is it that, firstly, China is still classed as a developing nation in the United Nations? And secondly, I keep hearing reports that they keep devaluing their dollar. Yep. And thirdly, they pay their people, I don't know, peanuts per day to produce this
chicken
stuff.
feed. Yeah.
How do you compete with that? So for me why aren't we pushing for China to be classed as a First Nation? Like we are a developed nation, basically. Take those incentives away from them because they're not doing anyone any favours. It's not just us, it's all the other Western nations that are feeling the pinch at the moment. The fact that we've got a disease, a virus that comes in from a country and then we have to go to that country to buy the hand sanitizer.
I know. And then they get upset when we say, hang on, we want an inquiry into this disease that come from you. Absolutely. No, you can't be doing that.
There's a few things there. I'll say, like the, if you look at their stock market hasn't been hit near as hard as anyone else's, the Chinese stock market. So that's the first. The second thing I'll say, they devalue their dollar. In Australia, we've propped ours up. We've propped ours up to the point. I've heard people say that our dollar should be down around 40 cents. Now, if it goes down to 40 cents, there's a guy I know, he said for every cent the Australian dollar drops for the Burdekin community, it brings in another $6.5 million. So put that in perspective. If the dollar's at 70 cents and overnight it drops to 69, there's another $6.5 million comes into the Burdekin community. Yep. You drop that to 40 cents.
Yeah.
That's big money. You're talking. So that's, all of a sudden you've got more people buying cars in the Burdekin and all that sort of
disposable income too.
So it changes quite quickly. And what that does, and the third thing I'll say about this, why I think farming's really struggled, when they deregulated the pear industry, when it was regulated, a lot of people think regulation's bad. Now, when it was regulated, it was cost plus CPI. That's probably not the best business model in the world to have. But when you're trying to get manufacturing, when you're trying to actually have a competitive on the world stage farming industry, cost plus CPI is a brilliant thing because, as it states, cost plus CPI, it means your workers that look after all the critical infrastructure, they're not harmed. Like, they don't have to take pay cuts. But what it means is that you don't have a state government that's making $3 billion a year of something that us Queenslanders already own. So you've got a lot of farmers out there, especially in the Mackay region, especially the Burdekin region, the Ingham region. Probably not, I don't know, it depends how much rain Ingham's had, but they probably wouldn't have to spend the money on the power. But if you're in places that have a lot of money spent on irrigation, I think it's costing them $7 a ton to irrigate, and to water. So you take, you know, especially if you're working on a world market price for sugar, you get hit big time. So if you know, you drop all those costs, you know, still be on the world stage, but actually drop that, you know, that fixes a lot of your stuff. And I know if your cost of power dropped right down and your dollar was down, mate, manufacturing in Australia kicks off tomorrow.
Could kick off, absolutely, yeah.
And it becomes not an issue. And then the revenue that we actually make from those people, they start employing more people.
Yeah,
if
that's right.
comes down, it's a no-brainer. Yet here we are, we still don't understand it. And yeah, it puzzles me.
No, that's for sure. But look, I think we'd probably, you know, the other question I'd like to ask you, Mark, you know, where do you sit when it comes to, because I mean, Brendan just pointed out how much Central North Queensland, you know, we do the revenue we generate just, you know, in, say, for the mining, you know, resource sector or whatever, or even agriculture. Where do you sit when it comes to the notion of, you know, Central North Queensland becoming the 7th state of Australia? Do you see, you know, that as a potential or conceivable idea? Yeah,
I think it's definitely got merit. I think the only thing I haven't seen yet, and look, it's early days with it, is I obviously support the idea.
Yeah,
I do. I'm just conscious of what is it going to cost to set all this up, and who pays for that.
Yeah.
You know, I am conscious of, you know, I've had this discussion with a few people, and I do try and sell them on the idea. You know, we do produce a lot of revenue up in this area through our mining systems and stuff like that. And whether we draw that line across, it was around the Capricorn area, wasn't it? The tropical Capricorn.
Oh, there's,
that was one of the original ideas. Around that area. How do we set up that government? How do we set up? You know, do we have our own police force? Do we have, you know, all these little things that we need to think about? And ultimately, it comes down to we need to pay for it. How do we do that? So
I think to answer some of those questions, you know, we already pay for it. You know, it's not about how do we pay for it. We're already paying for it. So just if we start a North Queensland state, the police force that we currently have, they don't just diminish. You know, they just change the badge and off we go. It's got North Queensland instead of Queensland. So you know, we pay for all that sort of stuff. So I think they're all good questions, and general, like, I think the people, there's people out there with the answers, and I think that probably come out a bit better.
I think one of the things that Mark was also alluding to is what is the structures, what do they all look like? And, you know, I tell you what, I wouldn't like to replicate a model that we have currently as state government in the Central North Queensland. You know, the model of government, I would love to see, for example, the mayors of our cities be an upper house, you know, like, you know, that whole decentralising decision-making and, you know, really uniting communities on so many levels is a model of government I totally embrace. And I know that there's lots of variations to that model being thrown around, and there's also some preliminary economic studies about how it would work, particularly when we hit the 1 million mark in terms of population, because that's always been one of the counter arguments, we haven't got enough people, you know, that sort of thing. But I think it merits, and it is gaining greater momentum. It merits a thorough, proper study into how it would work economically, you know, socially, and even the political structures, you know, that would be best, because I would hate to see a replication of what we've got now, which is an imbalance for Central North Queensland. And I hate to see that imbalance, you know, on a smaller scale somewhere else in Central North Queensland state.
That's the last thing we need. That's the last thing we need. We don't need, and that's why, you know, we don't need another. You don't need another Brisbane or another southeast corner. You know that, and that'll be the last thing you want. You want that sort of spread.
And the other factor to consider too is that, you know, we create this new state, and, you know, we inject the opportunity of greater competitive federalism, which economically can be a wonderful thing for the nation. But we're going to do it in a way that, you know, the southeast, you know, state or whatever they become, they're not like harmed. I mean, we're not about trying to just cut them off and toss them into the ocean, you know, like it's about doing it in a sensible way that is actually of benefit to everybody in this nation. And that's the premise I've always taken. You know, it's about a model, a new state, which of course our forefathers, had in our constitution and projected that we would go down this path, create a new state to actually benefit everybody in the nation.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
So look,
all right.
I wholly support the concept, but obviously I'd like to see a bit more detail around it. That's all. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
totally
sure.
agree with you there.
There's a lot of things around it. What?
Yeah, there's a lot of good people doing a lot of good work around it, and there's actually a set of podcasts on Podbean that's called Yes to a North Queensland State, and there's I think 2 weeks ago an economist spoke about it, and there's various others that having conversations around it, looking at the historical movements, particularly with the New England movement to create a state. So it has been attempted, a new state creation has been attempted before in our history, but it's worth having a look for those who are listening to this program.
Yeah.
But look, let's just
for people who
sorry,
don't know
you go.
about for people who don't know about that New England thing, it got hijacked. Essentially, they brought in a city who was actually like Newcastle, I think it was, which was a Labor city. And that's the one thing. So if you look at the history, and you do support it, make sure you actually try and look at what's been done before, because the same tricks would probably be played, because they allowed, if they would just would have the people that it was going to affect, which is in that New England area, it would have won 63% voted for it. But what
it would have got up.
It would have got up. But what they did at a last minute, I believe it was like a last minute thing, they added in Newcastle, then it got voted down. So, that same thing, we need to make sure that, if it does go to a vote, that, on a last minute, that, Brisbane doesn't get included in the vote, because they're going to vote it down, because they're going to go, well, hang on, 75% of North Queensland's money that they make gets spent down here. Why would we want them to leave? So we need to really be careful, whichever way it gets done. And I'm not here to say how it gets done, but however it does get done, that, the people involved with it don't get railroaded.
Yeah, well, like anything, it's good to learn from history, and really take that forward when you're making new decisions.
That's
Look,
right.
Let's just finish on a question about COVID and our economy and our community. Mark, look, I'm going to just say it straight out. How badly affected have we been?
Well, I mean, and I don't know whether you probably would have, when this first hit and they shut everything down, driving to work, heading to the Upper Ross and into town, and having a look at the lines at Centrelink that were snaking out the building and down the road of people trying to get signed up to keep an income, to keep their families going. That was so sad to see. I mean, that was a hard hit for everybody.
Well, I have a son in Rockhampton, and he has never been on unemployment benefits, and he was one that had to line up and go through the whole process, and found it very frustrating, because he works in the hospitality industry, and doors were shut.
Yep, and that was probably the hardest hit. Hospitality, you can't mingle with people. You need to stay away from everybody. So shut everything down and wait, basically, was what everyone was told.
Yeah.
So, I don't think we've seen the full effect of it yet. Okay. We've probably seen the effect on jobs, early effect on jobs, but I think there's going to be more to come in the.
I believe median house prices have fallen 4.4% in the March quarter for houses outside of Brisbane. So is that a good or a bad thing? I mean, is it going to generate the potential for more purchases, or, are we just not in that position yet? Is it going to be more of a problem?
I guess the drop in median house prices is good for people wanting to buy houses. But those people that are wanting to buy houses at the moment are the ones that have got the jobs that allows them to have a steady income. So the demand's obviously dropped off because of COVID. So we will see the value drop commensurate with that, I believe. Townsville, I don't think we've seen a drop of that big, to be honest. Looking at some of the data during the budget, and I haven't worked out the average, but I didn't see a lot of properties that have dropped that much up here. I know mine in particular had just remained exactly the same. It hasn't changed in the area.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's based a lot on around what's selling in the area that you live and what's, what sort of values properties are going for. So they do a lot of machinations behind the scene to come to that. But, that property bubble in those cities can't last forever either. I mean, the value of some of those properties down there is just getting out of control. It's ridiculous. And, I keep saying to people, if you don't like it in Brisbane, move to Townsville. We've got plenty of stock up here that we're happy to move for you. Come and move up into the region,
Yeah. And, like CPI sitting at 1.7, there's a bit of wage growth. I think it's around 2.2%. But, what does this mean? I mean, I know you can't give me figures, but in terms of our rates, are we looking at rates sitting around CPI or higher or lower, or you can't answer that yet?
That'll all come out in 2 weeks' time. But, I think historically the last 4 years.
I tried.
with the council that we've been pretty, I guess, heavy on the rates or keeping them down. The first year was frozen, I think, and from there it's been more or less just CPI from there in. Because obviously the costs to council of doing their everyday business of repairing our roads and making sure that you got water when you turn your tap on and you can flush your toilet. Those costs don't go down.
No,
they continue to climb. And, so we need to keep a lid on those. If we keep trying to absorb them, well, then we need to go, right, which roads don't we do and which parks don't we upgrade? They're the sort of things that we need to balance in budgets. So,
And the city debt, are we looking at, I mean, I know these are unusual circumstances, so I'm very curious about what our budget's going to look like. Our city debt, what is it, 370 million around there? Are we looking at trying to attack that or just leave that, or does it grow,
Oh, look, there's always a priority to pay down debt, But, when we talk about debt, we're not borrowing money to buy cars and we're not borrowing money to do this. When councils go out and borrow money, it's for infrastructure. Those big ticket items that we can't just pull out of general revenue and go and pay for a $20 million upgrade to a water treatment plant. We've got massive, restrictions around the water that we put out of our sewage plants here because of the Great Barrier Reef. So that imposed costs on us that, for example, Brisbane doesn't have to put up with because, they hold us to a higher account up here. So, we're still dealing with debt that was accumulated during the amalgamation time. I've been told that historically, possibly Thuringia at the time, their infrastructure wasn't up to scratch. And when amalgamation came to, and they went, we got to spend all this money on upgrading plants, water plants, and debt shot up to 410 million at that time.
Through the roof,
Oh, it went up high, and commensurately, everybody's rates went up. At the time. I think mine went up around 30 or 40% at the time. So, I, in particular, I know the other councils on the team are very conscious of rate rises and we want to keep downward pressure on rates. And we've done that over the last 4 years. So,
like you said earlier, though, people are wanting more. People,
that's right.
People will go, okay, I want my rubbish picked up and I want green waste picked up, and then I see there's a Melbourne council
and I want dog parks and I want
and I want this and I want that, and people don't understand. The more they want, it just goes up. Like you can have it all,
but
when it comes to the cost.
Brendan, a good point. I had this discussion with a few people before the election about the perception that their rates are too high, and the funny thing is you really need to, the way each council does their rates is different. Brisbane City Council, for example, their water system has been sold off privately. So it's run by, just trying to think of the name of the company, but it's a private entity that runs it, or it's a government-owned entity, but it's a private entity separate to council. So I think down there you pay $4. It's around $4 per kilolitre, per 1,000 litres of drinking water. So, these people come up to me and say, my rates are too high. And I go, well, and they'll be standing there holding a bottle of Mount Franklin water, 600 mils, that they just paid $3.50 for 600 mils. And I go, do you know how much you pay for 1,000 litres of drinking water? And they go, no. And I said, it's about $1. Pay about $1 for 1,000 litres of drinking water. If you move to Brisbane, it's $4. So it's 4 times more expensive if you go down there. So, I guess
you got to ask
people want to see more and more. Sorry?
I was going to say you got to ask the question: how good is it that you sell off assets and make it private so that they can make $4 for 1,000 liters of water?
The unfortunate thing is, we don't want to see that happening at all.
No, God, no.
But things like there's events that we put on for the greater community.
Yeah.
They've all got to be funded. Those sort of things. NAFA, for example, that we did last year.
Yeah.
A great event attended by tens of thousands of people. That's not free.
No.
So we need to find how do we support these events? The Indian Fest and those sort of things. There's grants that we supply for that sort of stuff as well. So there is all cost to council, and we don't mind doing them, but we've also got to be conscious we don't put a too big imposition onto the ratepayer as well. Yeah,
it's a tough balance. People often say, especially somewhere like the Burdekin. I think we got pretty expensive rates, but then we got some of the cheapest water in the state. And so you get different types of things, where people are happy with it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
and you got to compare apples with apples.
Yeah, and
that's the thing. It's hard,
and it's always hard. I would probably note that the Burdekin Council, Burdekin Shire Council, spent a lot of money putting in footpaths around. Not just everywhere. There's always some sort of footpath going in. We still got places that up until 3 years ago in the centre of town that didn't actually have a proper road up the guts of it, and that was, so we're still seeing that, we don't have gutters everywhere, and that's, the council's still implementing all that stuff, still putting it in. In Townsville, all that's done, it's, just a part of the subdivision, whereas.
Yeah, it's saying it's done. I think the last budget though, Mark, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the council spent something like 430 odd million on roads and drains and upgrades. It's constant. There are aspects of the city that are outdated and it might be there, but it needs to be fixed, because major
well, classic example, you saw, Annette, I know you saw during the council election campaign, we had a pipe burst on Charles.
Yeah, that was quite dramatic.
And the result of that was that we saw some businesses flooded there that had to shut down for some time until they were up again. We don't want to see that stuff happening. That's infrastructure. That's
and the other big issue with a city like Townsville, Mark, and is that it's so spread out. And you have, pocket housing developments. I mean, you go all the way out to the northern beaches, which is quite a hike to the other side of the city. Right. And you can only stretch your dollar so far, because we don't have that high density population. We've got a good population, but it's not a high density. So you've got to stretch that dollar across distance again. And it's not, it's like it's like a metaphor for what happens across, central and north Queensland in terms of funding, really, isn't it?
Well, we have, I guess, what you got to remember is when development stretches out into those areas, I call it, and we all call it in council, we've got the non-sexy stuff, the stuff underneath the ground that you don't see. And, we've got sewage.
Kilometres and kilometres of sewage.
We've got thousands and thousands of kilometres of that stuff under the ground that every year is ageing. Yep. Every year we've got to depreciate that stuff through our accounting system. That's a cost to council as well that people don't think about. So, it reaches its end of life. This stuff tends to reach its end of life altogether. Crap, okay, so now we need to prioritise which stuff do we do this year and which stuff do we put off to next year? Because as I said, we've only got a finite amount of money. So we got a team of really good engineers that work through all that stuff and do all the modelling around what sort of stuff. So Charters Towers Road's a priority for us. We need to get that renewed. So that's a priority for us to make sure that sort of stuff doesn't happen again. But we don't want to see that stuff happening. And that's what we stay on top of it.
And how does the council get enough revenue without continually stinging the ratepayer? Like, is it, back to that rubbish thing, is it that we're all of a sudden all the rest of the councils around Townsville are dumping all their rubbish in there and making money off the power grid, or is there other things that, without going too far away, is there something
we get grants from different from different governments, federal and state, that help us out? For example, the pipeline.
Yep.
So that pipeline we've built to help drought-proof Townsville, stage 1 was funded by the state government.
Yep.
So those sort of big infrastructure projects I'll come on board with.
And we're waiting on funding from the federal for the next stage, correct? Now, how is that going just while we're here at this point? How far away is it?
I think they're still talking about it.
Oh my goodie.
So, you know, we're waiting for it. I believe it was an election commitment from the coalition in there.
Good at them.
And I saw there was an initial bit of pushback saying the business case doesn't stack up for it, and then everybody got involved, and then they went, "Oh no, actually, it's okay. We're still going to fund it." That was last year, and we're still waiting for the money. So, stage one's complete. You know, we just
so do you
show
think,
us the money. You know, let's get it going, because that in itself is a generator of jobs in prosperity.
Yeah.
Do you think it'll be next election's
promise?
I really hope it doesn't take that long. I mean, if that comes up as a promise again, then whoever makes that promise doesn't deserve to be re-elected, because the promise was made. I mean, it was very obvious. Promise made. Let's just get it happening.
So what's actually stalling it? Sorry. What's actually stalling it? Is it the modelling, the business case?
There's a dispute over the GST component. Now, I need to clarify on the GST component, because I know there's been some confusion around that. What I believe, so the state government gets its allocation of GST that the federal government collects through taxes, right? So I'm not sure the exact amount they get, but let's just say that Queensland gets 15% of the GST allocation, for example.
Mm-hmm.
What the federal government's turned around and says now is, well, actually, we're going to take the 195 million for stage 2 out of your GST allocation. So if they were going to get $1 billion, for example, the federal government's now saying, well, actually, we're going to take that out of that $1 billion we were going to give you, and we aren't going to give you the other 800 million.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Oh my goodness.
So that's the sticking point. The state's going, well, that wasn't the promise that you made. You said you would fund it. We did stage 1. Federal government's going, well, actually, no, we want to take it out of your GST component. So to me, it's a bit of a trickster type thing. You know, if you say you're going to do it, just do it. And let's all move on with our lives and move on to the next big project that we can secure for our area.
Yeah.
I always like to point this out because it probably annoys the rusted on voters of this party, but that party, the Nationals under Barnaby Joyce, spent $100 million on feasibility studies for dams. So in one of the driest nations in the world, we spent $100 million working out whether we need dams or not. So,
and where's that gotten us now?
Yeah, not far. We're squabbling over this at the moment, which is a not a necessarily very long-term next generation, address to our water shortage problem.
The project itself is fait accompli. We just need to get the cash, so we can then go ahead and start ordering the pipes and start building. That's what we need to do.
Yeah. All right then. Well, look, I think we've come close to the end of our interview. Look, Mark, I always give people the opportunity to just share any messages or anything you'd like to say to our listeners, our viewers. And this remains on our High Humidity Facebook page and is circulated. And like I said, could reach up to 10, 12,000, 13,000 people. So, anything you'd like to say, particularly in our current climate and current circumstances?
Oh, look, I feel people's pain in this this current time with the COVID stuff. I'd love to see the borders open today if we can start getting people back into Queensland. But I'm also conscious of what's going on down in Victoria and New South Wales at the moment with these clusters. I read various reports around the place that they tell us that eventually we're all going to, at some stage, acquire this virus, and they don't want us all to get it at the same time, and that makes sense. I understand. But it's a fine line we walk between opening things up and ending up with some sort of pandemic that breaks out again. We don't want to see that. So, I'd hate to be in the Premier's and the Chief Health Officer's shoes at the moment, because the pressure is building against them to open the borders and reduce these restrictions. I don't think some of those protests they had down south are helping the situation at the moment. We've now seen a third person test positive that attended those rallies. And I really hope we don't see another outbreak that results out of them at this stage. But, as I said, 100% behind them. We'll do what we can to try and help businesses and the rest of it through the year until we get out of the other end of this. But just remember that, we obviously have a responsibility to the city as well. and we need to make sure that we can deliver basic services around the city. So, you know, we're all ratepayers in the city. All of us on council, we're all ratepayers. We're all members of the community. We all got friends that live here. Our kids go to school. We spend our money locally. So, you know, don't believe what you read on Facebook all the time.
Yeah.
If you've got a question about something,
good tip.
Yep. If you've got a question about something in relation to council, our phone numbers are all listed on our website. Give us a ring. You know, I can set you straight, or one of the other councillors set you straight exactly what we're doing. Because there's a lot of rubbish written on Facebook, and you know, it's always good to get it from the source.
100%.
Absolutely. Big believer in that, I am.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Good.
Now, Mark, before we say goodbye, the picture behind you, you have to tell us where it is.
Okay, that's up at Tulakia Beach.
Oh, lovely.
That's a picture I took when I went down fishing with the girls, down there catching some whiting off the beach. So we just went for a drive to get out of the house one weekend, and that's the beautiful coastline we have here in Townsville, which obviously stretches from Cape York all the way down past the Burdekin, down to the Whitsunday. So, you know.
We're spoiled, aren't we? I
Are
reckon we live in the best part of the world. I'll keep saying it.
No arguments from us. I'm going to
Yeah. Excellent. All right.
Very well.
Thank you very much, Mark, and thank you for giving up so much of your time. Look, hope you have a lovely weekend, and maybe you'll return to us perhaps post-budget. We can talk some more down the track.
Anytime you have a chat, let us know.
Yeah, absolutely, mate.
Thanks for your time, Mark. Much appreciated.
No worries at all, Brennan. Anytime.
All right. Take it easy.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye. All right.
No, some good points there, and it was good. Yeah, it's good to what I would say, especially when he's talking the political stuff. You know, being in that broad church or whatever, it's very good to actually hear someone with that common sense factor, being from the ALP, and being probably what would the word be? Being, I don't know, nearly embarrassed that some of the carry on that they do have, and him trying to, you know, and it makes a valid point, trying to say that, you know, let's be in that church trying to actually fix it up rather than actually sit out there and bag it out. So it's a good point that he makes.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. You got to be in there to make change. You got to be part of it to make change. And, you know, look, Mark's followed that through. He said, you know, there was a set of values he had as a young person growing up, and, you know, later as an adult, those values aligned more so with some of the values of the Labor Party. Yes, there were aspects that he didn't like, but that was sort of greater alignment for him. So he got in there, and, you know, he wants to sort of, you know, shape it, be part of the change, be part of the evolution, and, you know, I guess perhaps fight some of the direction that the party is going that he doesn't agree with. And I think that's commendable. That's credible.
Yeah, definitely.
That's, you know,
because
standing by what you believe in.
A lot, I would say that the left side of the Labor Party is seen a lot more than the middle to right scene. So, which would be frustrating. Like if that was your party and it was taken over by the lily pad left, as I've like to describe it as, and like I hear it being described as, because it is quite funny, the lily pad left.
Yes.
Anyway, it's good.
No.
Good
yeah, very good chat.
I like the fact that they're looking at that rubbish stuff. That's sensational.
That's good. That's really good, isn't it? And it's complete fluke that you mentioned it, and it's being spoken about. So
and it's funny. Sometimes it probably doesn't get pushed out because they're obviously doing the business case on it. You know, for people who don't understand that, you know, if you could get rid of your rubbish, you know, I just think I would see that as, you know, free power, really. You know, obviously. Free power for
the personal people that can fund it. You know, you've obviously got a little bit of an industry there. I mean, the beautiful thing is the smaller communities who can't afford the 50 million setup can find a way to dispose of, and, you know, and it's much, you know, more effective environmentally.
Because getting rid of rubbish is an expensive thing. Like I don't think people realise that it's very expensive, and a 50 million, and whether it's 50 or 60 or whatever, but, you know, people don't realise it's a very expensive thing. There was a comment on there, you know, the fees at the tip, you know, ask about them. I would assure you that if they did build something for $50 million, I would assure you that dropping your rubbish off would become free because they would want that rubbish and they would want to be paired.
Use it as energy. You can, yeah. I don't know if you're aware of the Harvey Range recycling dump. It's apparently quite innovative and the best in the north. And it's potentially a place, if you're willing to sort, that you can actually dispose of everything at no cost, you know. So, but you have to plan your trip to the dump in a way that you can recycle. It's an incredible recycling facility. I don't think a lot of people actually know a lot about it, but it's on Harvey Range Road heading out towards Rupert's Foot, Alice River. And, you know, the people that I know that have gone there said, yeah, it's pretty fantastic. So it is worth looking at. It only opened this year by the City Council. So it's a recycling facility, and I think it's also a dump shop as well, so you can actually purchase things there and whatever. So it's just another way to, you know, I know when I lived in the UK, recycling, there was a whole different attitude, a whole different approach to recycling. I had so many bins, I didn't even know what they were all for. And I had to get educated on these little bins and these bigger bins and what was in it. And I stuffed it up for weeks. Like you'd think, but because I come off, you know, I was living on a property out on the Fitzroy River, and, you know, I dispose of my own rubbish in incineration and stuff like that. And I just didn't have that culture and knowledge apart from, you know, what I've learned at school. But so, you know, different societies have taken different approaches. And of course, you know, in England with a population of 65 million and an island that fits into North Queensland in terms of land mass, you have to be smart about recycling. And I think 100%. We're in a generation, and I know they teach it at schools quite clearly, we're in a generation where you need to be smarter about how we dispose of our waste. And, you know, I love this idea of, you know, creating energy out of it that is useful for all of us. And it's exciting. Let's see what happens on the horizon.
Yeah, let's see what comes of that, because I think that'll be a great thing for, you know, not only for North Queensland, but I think it'll be a good thing for Queensland and Australia. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Very good.
All right.
All right.
Okay, mate. Well, you have a great weekend, and
enjoy the rest of your weekend. And for all those people who tuned in and who are going to watch this in the future, thanks for watching it. It's
Thank you.
Appreciated. And hopefully,
please feel free to share our interviews, and we look forward to you staying with us. And
Is next week school holidays? Are we pulling up for school holidays? Or
no, we're going ahead. I think we'll probably negotiate the middle weekend, but so we'll talk some more about that. But yes, we're going ahead with next week. Can't believe this. We've done 8 interviews. It's been 2 months already since we started the show. It's really good. Getting a lot of good feedback. All right, mate. You have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you again soon. All right. See you. Bye.
See you. Bye for now.